So our last section, and we are coming towards the end, and this is such a treat, as everything has been such a treat for us. But this is a wonderful treat of a collaboration of two amazing artists who know each other, but they are miles and miles, hundreds and hundreds of miles away, but yet they found a way to have that magic of collaboration. So the first person I'd like to introduce, she's an associate artist with the Geraldine Conner Foundation. Her name is Christella Litras, or better known as Stella. We all know her as Stella. She is a graduate of Bretton Hall and is a musical director, composer, lyricist, vocal, keyboard player, percussionist, workshop facilitator, musical mentor for over 20 years with an amazing track record that was recognized by the Arts Foundation Fellowship when she was a runner-up for that award. She is the founder of the amazing Caution Collective, and she's also worked across popular culture and musical genres. She's worked with so many amazing people. I mean, I'm not going to name them all because you can actually find her biography, but she's worked with the likes of Denise Pearson, Sting, Beverly Knight, Kim Weston, Tom Jones. I mean, come on. She's worked with Phoenix Dance Company in their Windrush Generation program, David Hamilton. She's worked for the West Yorkshire Playhouse. There's so much that I could say about that amazing artist that we're going to see later on, Christella. I also would like to introduce, and I'm very, very honoured to introduce this amazing lady, Camille Quamina. Now, Camille had a spell in Leeds with us, and I've had the pleasure of working with her. And I also had the pleasure of seeing her in Jamaica. She is actually originally from Trinidad, but she now lives in Jamaica. She is a senior lecturer at the Edley Manley College of Visual Arts and Performing Arts and School of Drama. She's a theatre practitioner and she works regionally and internationally with a special focus on applied theatre. As an actor-director, she specialises in Caribbean theatre for over 2 decades. She's worked with the likes of Nobel Prize winner Sir Derek Wilcott, playwright-director Geraldine Conner, Royal Gibbons and Tony Hall, amongst so many other people. She's a member of Art in Action, which is based in Trinidad, where they work with applied theatre as a collective through the University of the West Indies. There's so much more that I can say about Camille. She's now living in Jamaica, but we do want to welcome them. I feel like we're welcoming them to this big stage, and let's imagine this is a big stage, and we've welcomed all these amazing people like Colin and Linton and yourself, Emily, and all the readers. So let's imagine that this is the big stage of, I don't know, the West Yorkshire Playhouse or something like that. Let's welcome both Camille and Christella to the stage. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Christella. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. You look so beautiful, Khadijah.
Thank you, and so do you. Those juicy, juicy red lips are just glowing. Oh, bless you. So I'm going to actually hand it over to you, Stella,
okay,
to present your work with Camille. And then later on, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, if that's okay, about your process.
Yeah.
Okay, so over to you, Christella.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and Camille to join forces. It's amazing. We've got great history together, and you know, we do have quite a lot to say, but we're going to try and do it in 15 minutes, right, Camille? So
a lot to sing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so my name's Christella Litras. I'm a singer-songwriter. I was one of Geraldine Conner's students. I was involved in Carnival Messiah. And back in 1999, I'm not giving away my age, guys, but back in 99, Geraldine chose 3 people from her cast from Carnival Messiah to go to Trinidad and represent an excerpt of Carnival Messiah. And I was very honored to be chosen to do that. I felt quite pressured, you know, at the time, but looking back, I think, you know, to be chosen was what an honor, you know, to stand with Geraldine and represent such an amazing, spectacular piece of work. So when I went out there, I became very close with an amazing singer called Ella Andor, which Camille's going to talk a lot more about. Um, she is a Calypsonian. She sang soca songs. She's one of the first artists to combine, female artists to combine Orisha chants within her Calypso music, and we'll be demonstrating what that sounds like as well as we go on. So yeah, I've had a lot of experience and a lot of teaching from Ella. I think that's about it for me. I'm going to pass it over to Camille, and then we'll talk more about the Orisha tradition and how that relates to Calypso.
I think what we wanted to do is share a little bit about our musical journey with these two very great women. I mean, when Stella came to Trinidad in 1999, we were involved in a play, myself and other young people who were studying at the University of the West Indies, in a play called Shango Tales of the Orisha, and Rewar asked us to be part of that play as cast, and we met Ella Andal. I think the important thing about Ella is that she directly connects our music to its ancestral roots. I mean, she's not the first, but she's the first person probably who came out and said, I'm an Orisha practitioner. And this is where I find my inspiration. I think it was important for me to talk about Ella in connection with Geraldine, because Geraldine and Geraldine's father did so much work around ensuring that we understood what those traditions were, those musical traditions were. He was one of the first people that I remember hearing about that, you know, kind of archived our folk songs and our spiritual songs as well. Of course, he was a singer and actor and did a lot of good work, him and his wife, Pearl, for Caribbean people here in the region, and of course in England. And I think that kind of meeting kind of helped us to probably create what we wanted to share today as it relates to music, contemporary music, spirituality, and that music kind of existing on a global platform. And what that might mean for generations of people in the new generation of young people making music or making their way in art, having inherited all these experiences, all this knowledge from the generation that went before. As a Caribbean woman, the idea of Windrush is this thing that you read about on the BBC. I mean, we all have stories of parents or our relatives that went away to study to be nurses and went off to work. And the idea of Windrush, it's only now making sense to me that, oh, that's what my great aunt did. She was part of that movement. You know, that's what my husband here, Marvin's uncle, did. He was part of that movement, leaving Grenada and going to England. And so for me, what I understand that generation's contribution to be is giving us a sense of the Caribbean. When you're on the island, you think you're an islander. You think I am a Trinidadian, you think you are a Grenadian, you think you are a Jamaican. The idea of the Caribbean, I always say, was really forged or formed in the UK, very strangely enough, because out of two big historical experiences, we got two things. One was identity, and the other one was regionalism. Identity really because when our forefathers went off to fight in World War II for the empire, they got a rude awakening, you know? And a lot of our political leaders came out of that period and came back as nationalists, fighting for independence away from imperial rule. The second wave was this Windrush, where people couldn't identify simply as just being Jamaican or Grenadian or Trinidadian, you just had to be Caribbean. And one of the ways they did that was through culture. It's really that music. And I always talk about two, just before we play the song, the idea that Calypso kind of represents that generation, or Kaiso represents that generation, because most of the folk that comes out of the region really is rooted in that Kaiso, Calypso Stella could talk more about that. She's a musician. Kaiso Calypso tradition. And I think now too, what defines us as Caribbean people is reggae and dancehall on that broader stage. But because we're very spiritual, Stella and I, we inherited a lot of things from these journeys with Geraldine and Ella. One of the things we inherited is paying respects to spirit. And so what we want to do is to play for you the opening chant, which is to Eshu, who stands at the crossroads, who makes sure that we don't have any mischief, and to really help us to make the right choices and to say and sing the right things to kind of bring that connection home. So
and also
go ahead.
Just no, that's amazing. Also, that's what Geraldine opened Carnival Messiah with, the excerpt of Eshu. So it actually makes sense, and as we're speaking today, that we cannot do anything without consulting Eshu first. And it's really the spirit of flow and possibilities and openings. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Camille.
Eshu, Eshu, Eshu Adara, Eshu, Eshu, Elaroye, 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 Eshu, Eshu, Elaroye, Eshu, Eshu, Eshu Adara, Eshu, Eshu, Elaroye, 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 Eshu, Eshu, Elaroye, Eshu Paroko, 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 Eshu Paroko. Give thanks. That was our offering. Go ahead, Stella.
I just wanted to big you up with that Hilili at the end. I'm not even going to attempt to do it, but that Hilili, oh, come on, Camille, demonstrate that a cappella. That's just so hard to do because Ella couldn't find anyone to do that Hilili like Camille. And on all of her albums, it's Camille's voice doing all those beautiful sounds, you know?
No, I will not demonstrate it.
You don't need to, you just heard it. So, yeah.
That was Eshu. Mm-hmm. And Stella and I were in conversation talking about how we were going to connect Orisha to Calypso. And of course, I have a husband here. His name is Marvin George. He's my boss. He's the dean of School of Drama at the Andaman College, and he was correcting us and said, okay, those links that you're trying to make are there, but there's a way in which you have to shape that narrative so that we give people the right understanding of what happened to our ancestors and how that music kind of made its way into what we now call Kaitso and Calypso and Soca, right? Marvin, he ain't ready yet. So I'm gonna ask you to speak a little bit about how Orisha music is connected to what might be our contemporary or popular form of music and expression.
Oh, okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening. It's probably about three things. One is Orisha music and its way of working through the minor minor key, right, Stella?
Yeah, that's right.
That's one. Early Calypso, the earliest of Calypsos work in that way. They work through the minor. In fact, many of the early Calypsonians refer to themselves, the top ones refer to themselves as the master of Re minor, or the master of Mi minor. You would hear them when they're singing, talking about themselves in that way.
Yeah.
Right? That's one. Two is the call and response nature of the Orisha, of any Orisha Oriki. That carries over into Calypso. So all early Calypsos work in that pattern. Simple call and response songs. In fact, the very earliest of Calypsos at the end of the 19th century were really four-line songs, four-line rhymes that were responded to with four-line responses, which is very much like an Orisha chant, or sometimes two-line calls responded with a two-line response, right? And then I suppose thirdly, at least, is that the people and in some ways space involved in it. That some of the early calypsonians like Growling Tiger, they were chanterelles. And some of the very early calypsos, like ones that you may find recordings of in the 1930s, notwithstanding they are sometimes contentious or contradictory or almost mocking relationship with the tradition, that they were also borrowing the chants and putting the chants in calypsos, either for the sake of storytelling or because a chorus song nice, you know, an Orisha Oriki chorus song nice, and they would just use it, which is still slightly different to Ella and I suppose, in the sense that I can't say safely that they were all practitioners, but there's a sense in the work of the early calypsonians that they had a strong appreciation for what the tradition might be, and the ways in which it might have affected their music. And then that's compounded, of course, with stick fighting and other things.
Which is the narrative that we know, which is, you know, the chanterelles were the chanterelles of from the Kalinda tradition, the martial arts, and that led to Calypso, which later on led to Kaiso, which then led to Calypso, and of course now we have soca and all these wonderful African words, because remember we were talking about Kaiso. Kaiso is the first word, which is that response to a good tune, a response to a good verse. Kaiso, you know, and the research shows us that that is a Hausa word, and it's a Hausa expression, and it's a way of acknowledging a strong piece of singing or storytelling in a song. Now Stell did this wonderful thing with an Orisha chant, and she wants to really demonstrate the progression of the ancestral music from the ancestral music to the popular form of Calypso, and into what our generation and generations after us would imagine the music to be. Stell, you want to talk a little bit about what we're going to listen to?
Yeah, definitely. So whilst living out in Trinidad and doing my research on Orisha music, and really getting that first-hand information and being part of Ella Andel's albums, both Camille and I, and Marvin as well, I believe Marvin played a lot of the drumming and sang on that as well. I came across a chant, an Orisha chant called Jaja Romie. Jaja is another name for Shango. It's like a nickname for Shango. And the actual song means I am homesick, okay? Now, when I read the notation, I played it on the piano, it sounded very straight. There was no syncopation, there was no offbeat to it. But when I played it on the piano and Ella Andel heard it, she just started to swing it into like a Calypso vibe. And she included it on her Shango album. So, you know, it's, for me, listening to that actual melody, it's that minor key. It sounds like Calypso. And also another one of my friend who's actually watching this now, I'll mention her in a minute, because we do have a legend watching this. Denise Pearson's actually watching this, Khadijah. So we've got our guest here watching. So she's the one who actually told me that the Jaja Romie chant sounds like the Bach, one of the Bach songs. It's called Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and it's that organ piece that goes da 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 da, right? And I'm telling you, the notes in that classical music piece, that dramatic organ piece, it has the same notes as this African chant. But let's have a listen. And actually, before we do, I wanted to kind of demonstrate how that chant could flow straight from the Orisha form into Calypso, into hip hop music. So Zoe, do you mind demonstrating the song, please?
Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Ebitibini. Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo, Jaja Romi Ebitibini, Jaja Romi Shongo.
Yeah, so there you have it. You know, it was really fun putting that together. And I think just to elaborate what Marvin was saying about those musical features in Orisha, you know, some of those musical features that we can find in Calypso is the 4/4/4 time, the syncopation, time signature. Then we add the acoustic bass guitar, the trumpets, the saxophones, the electric guitars, the drum kit. African Latin percussion, and then it often uses like 3-beat rhythms with long beats that follow, the which is a pan riff anyway, and then the whole musical feature of call and response, which is very, very prominent within Orisha, Calypso, and hip hop, R&B, all those other modern music manifestations. And then we have the simple harmony, and we have verse and chorus. So can we quickly just mention what Chanterelle, what Chanterelle means for those that may not know what the word Chanterelle means?
Mommy, you have to correct me if I'm wrong. Chanterelle, that's French.
It's a French root, yeah.
It's as a French root, French patois. Singer?
Chanteuse is to sing.
Chanter is to sing.
Emily.
Chanterelle. Oh, Emily can tell us from your Martinican French roots. What is Chanterelle?
To sing, so chanteuse. It comes from a chanteuse, the singer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So because Trinidad had a predominantly Patois-speaking population during the time of enslavement, most of our songs were sung, the first calypsos were sung in patois. What we called, the person who would call the song, who would sing the lead, is the chanterelle. Yeah, and I'm sure that's some kind of derivative between what is French and what it could be from other African linguistic remnants. So that the chanterelle is the lead singer. It features in most of our traditional music. It features in a lot of African, a lot of African music, in ancestral music or folk music has this call and response, has the chanterelle giving you the first verse, and then you respond.
But also the connection, Camille, between Calypso and the Orisha Yards. Because like the Orisha Yards is a place of worship where Orisha devotees, they do their offerings and their feasts. And a lot of those chanterelles are the lead singers that call the chants, and then the other participants and devotees will respond. So there's a lot of the chanterelles later became Calypsonians, and the Orisha Yards was a place where they can you imagine being in a yard for 12 hours as a drummer, playing those Orisha rhythms where we as musicians might rehearse for 2 hours a week and we think we've done something, but in these palais, in these Orisha yards, the drummers are there. I mean, Marvin knows about this, for 12 hours and they're swapping, and can you imagine technically how brilliant these drummers were? And they also went into
sorry, Sal, in preparation for this.
Yeah, go for it,
did a play called Ongayan, which was written by Roll Gibbons, and he kind of unearthed the connection between Panmen and the Orisha Yards, which is where you were going, right, Sal?
Yes.
The fact that a lot of our early pioneers were Orisha drummers, just as a lot of our early Calypsonians were chanterelles from yards, from Orisha yards. The idea of the yard in the Caribbean is a very complex thing, because there's an Orisha yard, there's the barrack yard, there's the pan yard, there's the tenement yard. Yard is there's yardie, Jamaica yardie, The idea of the yard and this communal space, laku, that is, laku means laku. Yes, Emily, this is you again. Laku, L-A. C-O-U-P. I think that C-O what? C-O-U? I can't remember. My French is bad. I was never good at it. Don't mind my first name.
But we spell it L-A-K-O-U, I think.
L-A-K-O-U, that literally translates into yard. A lot of these spaces were cultural spaces where we would sing, we would leisure, we would pray, we would do everything in a yard setting. So it is really where a lot, the bedrock of Caribbean culture comes out of the yard. Yeah?
Yeah.
Don't make me talk so much.
No, it's all right. I think we only have about 2 more minutes to go. So what we'll do, guys, just to wrap this up, it's just really kind of, that's amazing. And I'm so glad Marvin's there too. That's phenomenal. It's just really looking at how we connect the dots, okay? And we are going to play a chant that represents Oya. And Oya, we haven't really spoken much about the Orishas and their attributes, but Oya is the Orisha of change. She's the Orisha of the wind. She's the keeper of the cemetery. She's very powerful Orisha. So they're the kind of attributes we're looking at. But before we play it, we just want to kind of mention that those key features within Orisha and Calypso and hip hop, a lot of our artists today that may sing, that may be kind of grime artists and our MCs, you know, they don't really know the root. They don't know where it comes from. So if we look at, I think Camille said something quite powerful today, which I'm going to quote you, Camille. And if you said, if you understand your music and your heritage of the legacy of the people, then you approach it different. So there really is no room for lyrical content that has no meaning or disrespects people, if that makes sense. So
I get you.
Yeah, you know, so let's play the Oya chant. And Oya, as we say, is the Orisha of the wind. So we're looking at this whole Windrush movement, you know, it's quite representative. So, yeah.
Oya riwoya, oya riwoya, oya kamago riwoya riwoya, oya riwoya, oya riwoya, oya kamago riwoya riwoya. Oya riwoya, oya riwoya, oya kamago riwoya riwoya. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stella and Camille. That was absolutely amazing. I was just reading some of the comments and people just saying, this is amazing. It's so unexpected learning. What an experience that they're having in this process of learning through Generation Windrush. And that's what we really wanted to do. We wanted to bring something that is different to the usual narrative. And although we know that that common narrative is an important narrative and still relevant today, there are so much elements, so much, it's like a tree, isn't it, with roots. There's so many elements to that tree with its roots that connects that Windrush generation. So thank you, Camille and Stella. And I know there's so much more that you could touch on. I'm just very aware that we have gone over time. But the people are still here. Some have said thank you, they've had to go, but many are still here. So I do just want to take the opportunity to ask you a question, if that's okay. Yeah. And that's really about how you decided to come up with that process of delivering what you've delivered today. What made you go to the heart of Orisha to be able to come up with this magical, beautiful, textured music that is quite spiritual?
I think that's the generation that did it for us. That's the generation that pioneered what is now considered ethnomusicology and cultural research. It was Edric Connor who decided that he had to archive that sound, and so that many years later, his daughter and now people like us and Stella inherit this knowledge of where our culture comes from, and then what we can use it to do for the future. And I think in retrospect, of course, this was not while we were planning. In retrospect, no, you know, that legacy of that remembrance and that reclaiming of ourselves and our identity as African Caribbean people, Indo-Caribbean people, or whatever flavor we come in the Caribbean. I think it's important for us to remember that they remembered for us, yeah? And so here I am standing or sitting in 2020 in the middle of COVID, and I could share that again with my generation and the next generation.
Stella, did you want to say something? Thank you, Camille. Thank you very much. Stella, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think for me, coming up with that section where we joined the Orisha, Calypso, and the kind of the hip hop vibe, for me that kind of represents my journey as an artist, going to Trinidad in '99 and really just finding myself, you know, musically, and spending time with Ella and being around other Calypsonians, because at the time I didn't realize how amazing that opportunity was, you know, to be absorbing all that musical culture. It's just amazing. And Geraldine, I have to really give thanks to her because she put me on that path. And so for me to be able to come back 10 years after being in Trinidad and I'm able to kind of use all those skills and channel that and put it into the work that I do. And even the work we've done, Khadijah, with Sorrel and Black Cake, which is an absolute blessing. And we featured the Oya chant, and it was your idea to feature it here. So, you know, it's just amazing how we can connect the dots. And if we just look at music as this heartbeat. You know, there's this heartbeat that just flows. It just flows through every style and every genre. Everything is connected. Music has been amalgamated over the years, and it's so hard to pinpoint exactly where it comes from. But as long as we honor the root, you know, and we're starting with Africa, and we look at how Africa has influenced the whole world, culturally, musically, spiritually, and I'm really honored to be part of that. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
No, thank you both. Thank you, Camille, and thank you, Christella. And I love the fact that you took it from its root to Calypso, because when we're thinking about that ship that docked at Tilbury, the first musical notes that they heard from a man was Lord Kitchener, and he said, "London is the place for me." And he sung in that Calypsonian voice that is so strong. And when we think about he's coming from the root of all of what you and Camille have been talking about, that call and response. And no doubt he would have known so much about Orisha, he would have known so much about Chanterelles and that whole call and response of pulling narrative and telling stories. So it was so appropriate today to take it to that root of Orisha and the whole thing of spirituality and the way in which sounds and vibration and music travels to inspire a whole new generation of singers and writers. And rightly so, this gathering today is generation dreaming, as we continue to dream what our forefathers were dreaming, and we continue in that journey to dream and redream and manifest all those stories, because we never leave them behind. And it's so inspiring. So thank you all. Thank you, Camille. Thank you, Chistella, and everybody else that's been here. I'm aware.